Okay guys, so the secret to getting like the very best meat pie filling is layering the flavor. We need to layer as much savory, salty goodness into our meat mix as possible. So to start off with, let's get seasoning on our beef. Now I am using a beef brisket. What you want to use here is any kind of secondary cut of beef. So chuck steak, gravy beef, you could do beef short ribs, that's also good. You want a cut of beef that's going to break down and get all gelatinous and, you know, shreddy and awesome. So I want to start with a little bit of salt on my beef here and a really good sprinkling of pepper too. And toss that all around. I want each little bit of beef to have some salt on there. I'm even going to add some more salt here. So next up, we want to sear our beef. And again, guys, even though we're searing, this is all about flavor. We want to get a really good crust on each little piece of beef, and that little crust, that is what gives us really beautiful flavor. So to make sure that our beef is really nice and dry, so dry, the outside of your beef being dry is going to help you get that better crust. There is method to the madness, everyone. It all works together. So what we want to do is pop our beef into some corn flour, give it a toss, and that will ensure like each piece of beef is really nice and dry. And then I want a little bit of oil in a hot pan, and I want to just pop our beef pieces in, and you want to sear in batches here. So the reason why we sear things in batches, well, if you overcrowd your pan, you get everything stewing, you know, where all the juices come out and everything kind of, well, it just stews rather than sears. So that's why you do things in batches. So we're going to be patient. Okay, so this is the kind of color I'm talking about, guys. Look at that, lovely golden. That is just pure flavor. So you know that thing where people often talk about, like, this is about where you seal in the juices? I mean, that's just total rubbish. This is a pure flavor play. What we're trying to do is just get that beautiful color, which means we're getting beautiful flavor. Everything is smelling beefy and wonderful, just as it should be. All right, so now that we've got this kind of situation going on in the pan, I can take these guys out. Okay, now whatever you do, do not clean that pan. This is one time I'm going to tell you, keep it a little dirty in the kitchen. This stuff in here, again, is that flavor that I'm talking about. We've got some beef fat, some little crusty bits of beef in there. We want to keep that. So to that, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Now, if your beef was really fatty and you've got a lot of fat in there, you wouldn't need to add the extra oil, but as you can see, there wasn't much fat left in my pans. Now I'm going to add some onion. And then whenever I'm sauteing onion, I like to add a little bit of salt because the salt helps to draw out the moisture from the onion, which helps them get nice and sweet and savory. Now, just as that onion's starting to soften, I'm going to add in my garlic. There's always something magical about onion and garlic sizzling on the stovetop. Makes me hungry. All right, now come the little extra ingredients that, you know me, I'm always adding, you know, unusual things to dishes, but obviously you wouldn't find these kind of spices in a regular meat pie, but I always love to add star anise into anything that I'm doing that's kind of beefy. I think it really adds a beautiful, like, background spice that kind of beefs up the beefiness or something like that. A cinnamon stick here, and then also a bay leaf. This is all going to make things a little bit more magical. So pop those in. Now we're going to start building up the like savory umami kind of thing. You guys hear me talk about umami all the time. I think it's really important. It's that sixth flavor that really gives you the beefiness, the savoriness of a dish. And tomato paste has that umami character in spades. So we're going to pop that in. And then just give it time to kind of cook out a little bit with that onion. And now I'm going to go in with some dark sweet soy sauce. You could just use regular dark soy sauce as well. This guy is going to give us a really beautiful deep color, also a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of that salty seasoning as well. Now, one last little secret ingredient here, guys, is regular old barbecue sauce. I love it because it's got like pickled garlic and Chinese 5-spice and extra bits and pieces, but whatever barbecue sauce you have in your pantry, totally fine to use, guys. All right, pop that one in as well. And then finally, some beef stock. Now this, guys, is already smelling amazing. Just as it starts to bubble, I can smell the sort of those little spices we've got in there and that like tangy barbecue sauce flavor. So good. Okay, now our beef goes in. And then toss everything around in there. All right, now I want you to bring this to a really gentle simmer and put the lid on, turn that heat really super low, and you want to gently simmer that for about 2 hours or until that beef is really tender. But do come back every so often and give it a stir. It's quite a thick mixture because of that corn flour, and we need that because we're making, meat pies. We want a thick, glossy texture, but it does mean you need to be careful. So come back and give it a stir every so often. It's gonna be worth it, I promise. All right, guys, kitchen is officially smelling so ridiculously amazing. I'm so hungry whenever I have to make anything slow cooked. Okay, let's have a look at what's happening in here. Whoa, holy smokes, check out that lusciousness. I mean, it looks thick and sticky and amazing. Now, what you'll notice here is there's a little bit of oil or beef fat on the top here, but not too much. Look, if you had a lot of fat on the top here, then just use a spoon and kind of just scoop it off. But this one's not looking too bad, so that's pretty good. What I do want to do is take out some of these spices. So I've got my cinnamon stick, my star anise, and my bay leaves. Okay, now check out this sauce when we go to stir. Wow, like the gloss, and see how thick it is. So the whole thing with a meat pie is you've really got to get the consistency right. So too runny and your pastry will be soggy, too thick and your meat filling will be too dry. So this is just the kind of, it's almost like a thick jelly-like texture that we've got here. It's just perfect. And then let's check out how soft that beef is. Wow, look at that, like ridiculously tender, just fork tender falling apart. Oh, so good. Okay, so what we need to do now is exercise a little bit more patience. I know this is like a patience kind of game here. I need to get this really cool before we go any further with our pies and pastries. So just let that cool down in the fridge until it is cold. Okay, our filling is nice and cool. We are now ready to finish off our beautiful meat pies. So an Australian meat pie, I think, has a structural integrity that goes a little something like this. We want some short crust pastry down the bottom, like a good, sturdy pastry that's very short in the crumb. So by that I mean, like, it's not puffy, it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's a good holder of the filling. Okay, so that's one part. The second part is that on the top, we like it nice and kind of light and airy. So for the top part, we want puff pastry. So you need two, short crust and you need puff to do it properly in the Australian way. All right, so let's start off with the short crust pastry first of all. And what you want to do here is cut your pastry to like roughly the size of your pie tin. Now I'm doing little individual pies. You could do a big pie. The shape and size of pie tins differ so markedly everywhere. I'm going to show you like a little sort of easy way to kind of, instead of trying to find circle cookie cutters that are exactly 17 centimeters, you know what I mean? It's always quite difficult to do that. I just do this. I simply cut my pastry sheet into squares. That are larger than my little individual pie tins, obviously. And then I kind of shove, very technical term, I kind of shove that square into the round, into that little tin. And then I just use my knife to kind of trim off little bits if I need to kind of fill in any gaps. That's the way I do it. I'm sure you could do it much neater if you had all the cookie cutters, all the pastry cutters in the world, but I don't, so that's the way I do it. And we just keep going until all of these are filled. So now that we have our lined pie tins, we can go in with our filling. Okay, so we've got our lovely filled pie cases here. Now, just so you know, these are about 1 cup capacity pie tins, so you should be able to get about 10 little 1 cup capacity pies out of these, or 1 giant 10 cup pie. So there you go. Let's get the toppings on these. So I'm using some puff pastry, and again, I'm gonna be like a little rough and ready here. I'm just gonna cut roughly like a rough kind of square. Sort of the shape or size of the top, and then sort of really squish down on here, concentrating on the edges where the 2 pastries will meet with your thumbs, sort of push that down. And then just to be sure, I like to get a fork and really kind of press down. Also, it's kind of like a little pretty too. Press down on those edges there, and then just use your knife to trim those edges. Okay, so we have our pretty little pies here. What we want to do is make some little steam holes, because the inside's going to get really hot and we don't want kind of like uneven bubbles and bursts. So just take your knife, make just two little holes in the top here. And now we want an egg wash over the top to make everything really golden and shiny and lovely. My little tip here is, instead of using a whole egg, just use the yolks. That's going to give you the most beautiful, like sunshine golden yellow color. So you just want to dip your brush in and just a light kind of coating on each of those. Now, I like to give these about an hour in the fridge before I go to bake them, because if the pastry is too warm, the fat in the pastry will melt too quickly in the oven, and that's when you get pastry shrinking. You know, when you get that shrinking effect in the oven? So putting it in the fridge first to chill down is going to help with that. So let's do that first. Once they're nice and chilled down, they head straight into the oven for about 30 minutes, or until they're beautifully puffy and golden. All right, so these are looking totally golden and delish. Oh, I love, things like this just always make me smile. So joyful. Look at that puffy pastry there, and that just looks perfect. Now, I like to get these out while they're still warm. It's a little tricky, but I find it's easier when they cool down. They tend to kind of stick in the tins. So here we go. Just run your knife around the outside, and we should be pretty good here because this is a non-stick tin. And then lift out your pie and onto your serving plate. Now, you'll notice that I have some good old, what we call in Australia, tomato sauce. You call it ketchup elsewhere in the world, but you would have to be the biggest food snob alive not to eat your meat pie in Australia without tomato sauce, in my opinion anyway. Come at me in the comments if you want, but it needs tomato sauce. So I'm gonna get a big dollop on top of one of these. And you know what? You just need to get straight in there. All right, so this is what I'm talking about, guys. Like, you want structural integrity here. So you should be able to pick up your pie, hold it in your hands, and everything should be contained, looking really, smelling really amazing. And we're just gonna go right in here. And the other thing, okay, forget about the integrity of the structure. That beef in there is so soft and tender. And the sauce, so savory, perfect, delicious, everything. This is how it should be, guys. You should be able to bite into the pie, and it should still, not run out everywhere, leak everywhere. It should be something that you can eat on the go, hold on to. And just, if you have a look at that pastry, like through there, you've got like your lovely like short pastry here and then your fluffy pastry here. I mean, this to me is like absolute perfection. Wow.